Hey guys, I read a really interesting report the other day talking about how unemployment rate from February to March had only actually increased by 0.1% from 5.2 to 5.3. I think this was astounding considering, obviously just observing around me, noticing how many businesses are now not operating, hearing from friends and hearing about layoffs within companies, obviously people being affected in their jobs. So in this video, I wanted to cover why I think the current unemployment rate might not be as it suggests, and why that might be somewhat inaccurate, and then also talk about what I'm considering at the moment, and then also why it's important, why we look at unemployment rate, as I believe it's affecting and making our recession worse at the moment. So with the recent intervention by the government trying to stimulate and help keep jobs, obviously with the job seeker $130 billion stimulus offered to businesses, I thought it'd be interesting to look into how many actual businesses have applied to see if they're eligible or be able to access those grants, so that they can pay their employees and essentially keep people in jobs. So there's actually been 38% of all businesses within Australia that have applied for the job seeker payments. So I think this number alone is pretty astounding, and it makes you realize how severe the current virus is affecting businesses. And it goes without saying, you just have to look around and you'll know that a lot of businesses have had to change their structure in terms of deliveries. A lot of businesses are affected by supply chain. So, for example, if you go to a store to buy, gifts and stock, they will get their stock from their suppliers. But if there's less demand for the products, the suppliers won't be producing as much, and therefore there's going to be a shortage of stock because of the current restrictions. There's going to be longer lead times on deliveries and shipments. That's why if you're purchasing something on Amazon or eBay, you'll find that the current shipping times are actually longer than typical. So all of these factors obviously are different ways of saying the virus and the cause of restrictions, which means that people aren't leaving their houses and businesses aren't able to manage their cash flow, is causing them to look at reducing costs. And previously I sort of mentioned some industries obviously affected a lot more than others, but across the board it's safe to say that businesses are getting rid of there are temporary job losses immediately because of the restrictions. Obviously, when those restrictions are lifted, some of those jobs will come back. However, I think with the unemployment, we're going to see permanent job losses. We're going to see a lot of small businesses file for bankruptcy because they can't, for example, pay their landlords the cost of rent because they haven't been able to get cash flow during this period. They've got other liabilities such as credit, which they haven't been able to pay off. So we're going to see a lot of foreclosures of businesses. We're going to see a lot of credit defaults. And then, further down the track, when unemployment rate increases to 10% or higher, we're going to see a lot of people affected and not able to actually make repayments. And as a whole, that's going to affect the economy and make people and consumers less likely to spend money. And this is a vicious cycle, as what happens is there's going to be less liquidity in terms of people willing to spend. Any sort of businesses that are in luxuries or in vacation or travel are going to struggle, and a lot of these businesses are going to default. The reason why this is important is if you're in one of these industries that is going to be affected later but not affected right now, you want to look at your personal finances and have some good rules, or start saving some money and prepare for at least 3 to 12 months of living expenses, for example. Because if things get worse here in Australia and you are left without a job, it's not going to be like a typical market. Even when restrictions are lifted, obviously there's the logistics of actually going to job interviews and businesses listing their jobs, but a lot of businesses aren't going to be able to survive this recession. A lot of these small businesses are going to come out on the other end and not actually be able to operate because they just simply haven't been able to survive the shutdown period. So that means that you could potentially, even with qualifications, you could potentially take 6 months before, or even 12 months before you can find a job, even with the qualifications. So this means that obviously if you've got financial commitments, mortgages, debts, then you want to be able to obviously cover these costs, your regular living expenses, and be able to manage for, you know, that period while you find a new job and get back on your feet. So that's why I think it's important. Now coming back to why I think the numbers of 5.3% aren't accurate is because obviously the government is looking at it from the perspective of classification of what unemployment actually is. By their standard, if an employer is still connected to a business through the job seeker program, but they aren't working, they're still considered as employed. Anyone who's had reduced hours, or basically hasn't been laid off but has been asked not to come into work, they're still considered employed. So I think these numbers are actually a lot worse than what the numbers suggest, and I think that we're going to see the long-term effects of this recession once the businesses come back online. But then we also notice that the economic impacts of the current situation with the virus is actually going to have long-lasting effects on businesses' survivability and their ability to continue operating coming out of the recession. So with all this in mind, I think that even with government intervention, it's going to be inevitable that we're going to fall into deeper depression. As an economy, Australia might be more well placed than other businesses, and I guess without sounding too doom and gloom, there are a few positives to come out of this. So obviously we're flattening the curve in the sense that the rate of infection has decreased significantly in Australia. We've got access to better testing, more readily available to test, and then also our ability to control this virus as businesses come back online and the social distancing rules get lifted in stages, I imagine. That's something positive, but I think that this is going to be something that is going to be lasting, and we're going to see things get more difficult for a lot of Australians over the next 12 months to 24 months, even further. So it's going to be a long time for our economy and the global economy to get back to where it was before the virus and before consumer sentiment dropped off. Anyway guys, in another video I'm going to cover how you can manage your personal finances and what you can do in terms of investments, and how you can financially support yourself during this tough time. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, got something out of it, make sure you like the video. Leave a comment if you've got any opinions on what I've said, or if you disagree. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.